Hi, I'm Tim, welcome to our channel, and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I do these kind of comparos all the time, and I can deliver to your inbox as soon as tomorrow morning. If you like these watches, you can buy one, you can buy both on our website, thewatchbox.com. Today, we are discussing Omega Speedmaster Mark II x 2. Watches to the fourth power. These are essentially twins separated by the better part of 4 decades, and quite frankly, automatic versus manual, luminova versus tritium, and professional versus coaxial. They cannot be more different internally, even as they represent a very similar design ethic on the outside. Let's talk a little bit about the Pretender. This watch, the Speedmaster Mark II coaxial chronometer, was part of a revived Mark II collection that bowed at Baselworld 2014. Now, it is larger than the original. Its outright dimensions are 42.4 millimeters across the broad of the case from 9 to 3. The watch is 15 millimeters even in thickness with a nicely sloped case flank. It will fit underneath the cuff, and perhaps not as long as you expected lug-to-lug at 46.2. 21 millimeters is the lug spacing, and it does not require a proprietary junction. You can actually use any standard 21 millimeter strap if you wish to accessorize this watch. Now, I will say that the timepiece on my wrist represents a larger and distinctly more massive presence. Bigger, but only next to the original. You can feel how much heavier it is, and that's mostly down to the solidity of the bracelet, which emulates the original watch's reference 1162 Tri-Link. It's polished on its flanks, it's satin on its tops. As you can see, big gaps on the underside to avoid pinching skin or pulling hair, and all of the sizable links are removable by screw. The clasp is far more solid, and you'll note the clasp features twin trigger actuation. You'll have absolutely no difficulty keeping this one secure even during the most violent of activities. Not that I necessarily recommend abusing your watches, but it's nice to know that there's resiliency built into the band. There is a push-button slider that endows it with 9.6 millimeters of incremental adjustment. Moving to the case, you can see very little has changed. Of course, this based on a Valjoux 7753, there is a case side pusher adjuster for the date, but at least aesthetically, it becomes very difficult to distinguish between the two watches, other than to note that there is a slight difference in scale. The timepiece, released in 2014, of course, features a more modern and more recently factory finished case, but the finish itself is the same. You'll note that there is linear satin finish on the flank. There is a sort of imaginary center origin sunburst that runs out over the profiles or hoods of the case, and there's a polished bevel with polished ends. Now, Omega would use a lapping machine to finish either the original or the new watch, and that's how that sunburst imaginary center origin point finish is applied to the top of the case. Now, the timepiece with the orange accents is powered by an Omega caliber 3330. Automatic winding, it has a 52-hour power reserve, coaxial escapement, column wheel actuation with a lateral clutch. The watch is 100 meters water resistant, screwed in case back, silicone escapement, free sprung for toughness. It has all the toys. It has hacking seconds. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. One thing it does not have, though, is a conventional quickset, because the Valjoux 7750, by reorienting its chronograph layout to be symmetrical and a traditional tri-register, you actually lose the quickset function. Now, you'll also note that the timepiece has a tachymeter like the original, but with the original, the tachymeter was printed onto the underside of the mineral crystal. With the new watch, it's actually a component sitting on top of a aluminum spacer that creates this orange inner haze. You can see how, we'll give ourselves a bit more aperture and light here. You can see how there's actually an inner glow of orange. That comes from the inner circumference of this aluminum ring that underpins the tack. The tack is also fully luminescent here, whereas on the original it's not. And I should also mention that the new watch has the so-called racing dial that you see here with the orange accents. The original had the dial you see here and the racing dial, but you'll note that there are none of the flourishes such as the checkered flag pattern hash marks outboard on the minutes and seconds track of the original, whereas if you were to buy the non-racing dial variant of the modern Mark II, you'll find it has the same sort of staggered checker pattern on the standard black and white dial, albeit in a different coloration. So there's really just one dial with two different colorations for the new Mark II, whereas there were two distinct dials for the original 145014. I should also mention, technically, this is not a 145014. This is a 14500014. So it's an original 1969 to 1975 Mark II that's received an Omega factory case replacement at some point, and that's why there is the double aught in the reference number. Now, the timepiece that is now known as the racing dial is, in almost every other respect, quite true to the original, with the number one change being that standout date window at 6 o'clock. If you like this practical information, you're going to love it. If you're one of the vintage purists who believes that if the original had no date, neither should the new watch, well, you're going to take exception. But in every other respect, other than the fact that the new Mark II racing dial doesn't feature orange hour and minute hands, it is quite faithful, right down to the coloration of the dial base, which is a matte gray. Now, jumping back to the vintage timepiece, this one is easy to wear on the wrist, and it actually features its original 1162 reference bracelet with 173 end links. The clasp is in good shape, and you can see it features the vintage Omega crown blazoned on its top. You'll also note the vintage Omega crown, or I should say Omega logo, on the crown itself of the timepiece. A slight superimposed flare to the mineral crystal, which rises a little bit above the case band. You put the watch on the wrist, it looks like the new watch, and the new watch looks like the old watch. Easy to wear on my 16 centimeter circumference wrist. When you zip forward and backwards through the video, you're going to find that they are very similar in terms of how they look, and the small differences in dimensions are almost imperceptible. This watch is 41.2 millimeters across the broad of the case. It's 0.2 or 0.2 of a millimeter thinner at 14.8, and you can see that it's only 1 millimeter shorter lug-to-lug than the newer watch. It has a 20 millimeter lug spacing instead of 21. They are very close, and you can see even on the wrist, when I bring the two watches into the frame, it's difficult to tell them apart. You're also going to note that the difference in terms of interaction and daily experience is more a product of the newer watch being automatic and the older watch being manually wound. Now, the newer watch does feature a column wheel function selector. The older watch features a cam system or a shuttle-based system. The newer watch features a 52-hour power reserve, and the older watch features a 45 to 48-hour manual wind power reserve. The older timepiece has the exact same movement that's in the Moon watch from the same period, so the 861 17 joules manual wind 21.6 beat rate, 45 to 48 hour power reserve, a cam system, and a lateral clutch, but tank tough. Remember, there's a reason this movement was originally certified for all NASA flights, including extravehicular activity, and it remains so to this day. It's a tough movement. Objectively, I would even say at the limit, it is tougher than the 3330 in the newer Mark II. That said, if you want water resistance, a date, automatic winding, a longer power reserve, and a warranty, there's only one game in town. Speedmasters to the fourth power, or the Mark II times 2, decide which one is for you on the watch box. And we're back with the Omega Speedmaster Mark II coaxial chronometer. This is the racing dial, and you can see now the tack fully luminescent. On the older watch, the original tritium dial has died an honorable death long since. This one, still fully functional as a sports watch. Day or night, see it on the watch box.